Welcome back to Romantasy Chaos HQ, the pod. We are Avery and Xavier Harleston, healthcare professionals by day, romantasy theorists, and aspiring authors by night. Today we are covering the epigraph from Fourth Wing, Chapter 19. This is your warning. There will be spoilers for the entire Empyrean series. If you have not read all three books, it may be time to turn back. We are not rated E for everyone. Xavier has a degree in cussing and is not afraid to use it. We do discuss any and all adult topics covered in these books. We like a challenge, so we tackle each epigraph without prepping, placing it into the context of the entire series, not just the chapter or book it's tied to. But you don't have to take it cold, so here's our one-sentence summary of the chapter. A month after threshing, Violet's days include library duty, watching yearmates manifest their signets, and seeing firsthand what happens when that signet is an intrinsic signet, before having to fight for her life when the unbonded attack, and Andarna stops time to save her. There are 6 minutes on the clock, and Fourth Wing lore more mysterious than the fables of the Barons. So don't blink, don't scroll, don't let Taryn distract you. We have 360 seconds to blow your minds.
Go.
There is nothing more sacred than the archives. Even temples can be rebuilt, but books cannot be rewritten. Colonel Daxton's Guide to Excelling in the Scribe Quadrant. Okay, first of all, let's start with Colonel Daxton. Colonel Daxton, do we agree that this is likely Asher's parent or grandparent, possibly his mom?
Yes, we do. And also that she's a liar, liar, pants on fire.
Obviously. Okay, so if we look at this about the sacredness of the archives, which almost implies a lack of regard for the gods, that information, knowledge is more important than the gods. And then we look at her response to Violet being partially dedicated to Dune. What does that tell us? Because I felt like when I was reading, I totally forgot about this. I totally forgot about this epigraph when we were reading Onyx Storm. And I felt like the reaction of like, oh my gosh, what did you do? Now we're going to cut off contact was actually potentially driven by the fact that like the recognition that the gods are real, the power of the gods is real, and you are fucking with something like massive, significant, powerful that you don't understand. And that's like the dumbest thing you can do, especially for a child who you feel is already, vulnerable. But now I'm reading this epigraph and I'm wondering, like, how does Colonel Daxton think about the gods? Like, to say that the archives are the most sacred thing, like, that just, oof.
Well, and it becomes this kind of worship of knowledge. And if you look at the North myths and go back to,
The Norse myth?
Norse myths, yeah,
Okay.
like Loki and Odin, when when the Vikings went to Iceland, which is all volcanic, right? And Rebecca Yarros just said, the magic is coming from the earth where it's most active. So let's look at the myths from Iceland. The myths from Iceland really focused on humans and nature being connected as one. And there'd be this connection that could, kind of explain this magical connection. But as knowledge began to come in, as Christianity took over, as it became monotheistic, knowledge became what was most sacred, what was respected, and the connection between human and nature became separate because humans were able to do things that nature couldn't. And that kind of also gets to Deverelli, where there's not magic. So there's not volcanoes, and it's all knowledge focused. And it seems like it's possible that even just Asher going back to the gods, going to get blessed, devoting what he was raised as a scholar, as what he was supposed to worship, and worshiping a god and dedicating to a god is could just be such an affront to the way that he was raised, especially if that Daxton is his parent.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's just like a modern equivalent would be someone who was raised maybe in a super scientific household who then later develops um their own uh, faith, whether it's in a or through organized religion or not, but then begins to say that there are things that we can't understand that defy human knowledge. There are things we can't understand through science, and those things are powerful and they're important. Um, and having this aspect of spirituality and how that can cause such tension in a family.
Well, and there's a difference between, Asher turning to spirituality and Asher taking a baby and dedicating them to a god and making a lifelong choice for that baby. Since if you're dedicated to Dune, you're dedicated to Dune. And if you turn your back on her, she's wrathful. There was nothing in that discussion about, like, she forgives you if it was when you were a child. Like, no, once you're dedicated, you're dedicated. It's much more like joining a cult than just becoming religious. So from that scientific perspective, if you came from a scientific background or even a religious background and then go and join a cult and dedicate your child to that cult, parents are going to be unhappy.
Well, no, and what's bonkers about that is that he does this thing. He dedicates Violet to this god and then raises her to be a freaking scribe where knowledge is still the ultimate. He doesn't encourage her to spend time in temple. He doesn't encourage a faith or a spirituality in her. As far as we're aware, she never mentions it, that there was encouragement from her parents, either one, to be spending time at temple. um so you've partially dedicated and in some way, I think, probably entangled your child, your baby's soul with a deity, and then you raise her where that deity, who you believe in enough to know that they are powerful, there's some sort of magic, there's some sort of protection, there's something beyond human comprehension acting on this child's life, but now you're raising her in such a way as to essentially pay little heed to
Well,
the gods,
and
like,
he didn't stop the dedication. The priestesses stopped the dedication and said, "Hey, maybe there's another path for this child. Maybe this isn't a good idea." At no point did Asher change his mind.
oh, and that's our time. So tell us, did we blow your minds? Let us know in the comments. And remember, we love you. Stay out of the clouds, off the ice, and come back to us. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Remember, lore lovers, fantasy fanatics, and good girls, like, rate, review, subscribe, and share.